pose this question as I start with our conversation. Did you know that God's invitation for man to follow him has begun ever since creation? Ever since Adam and Eve came into being, God has already extended that invitation to them to be able to follow him. And we will know that as we progress into the story of the Bible, we will know the grave consequences every time man forgets to follow his Creator. When Adam and Eve was placed into the garden, God's first instruction for them to follow is on how they will be able to live in the garden happily, to be able to enjoy everything in the garden. And one of those instructions that was given to them to follow is that not to partake of the fruit from the tree of good and evil. That was one of the instructions that was given to them. Of all the plants and the trees that are around in the garden, you may eat, enjoy it. Every fruit that you see, dragon fruit, apples, oranges, and everything else, except for one thing. Do not eat of the fruit from that tree in the middle of the garden. And we all know the story. They failed because they failed to follow what God has told them to do. And because of that, every time you read the book of Genesis, you will just have this feeling that the whole world is now spiraling down and embracing evil rather than embracing good. That in Genesis chapter 3, God gave a chance, a foretaste of how He is going to plan out this chance for man to be able to redeem themselves. And this is what God told. We all know the story that Eve ate of the fruit, and we know that they were banished from the garden. But before that, God made this promise to them. I will put enmity or division between you and the woman. Talking to the serpent, the craftiest animal ever to have been created. And between your offspring and hers. He will crush your head and you will strike his heel. This is the promise for redemption and salvation for mankind, for the whole of mankind. So every time you read Genesis, although from Genesis chapter 1 to 11, you will see, ano ba naman to? They're always sinning. They're always falling into sin. They're always making mistakes. All the more they were creating all of these problems for themselves. But backtrack always and go back to this verse. And you will put into mind, okay, there is a chance somewhere that God will fulfill this promise, that there will be division between evil and good, and that good will prevail. And this good is the person of Jesus Christ. So bear that in mind always, that God had already a plan. But you know how long this plan was going to happen? Between Adam, if you look at the genealogy and compute the number of years the people in the characters in the Bible would live, it will amount to about 4,000 years. Between the time of Adam until the time of Jesus, roughly thereabouts. I know some of you are already, the math geniuses are already starting to compute. Okay? That's about 4,000 years. Imagine if Eve was given that promise that, hey, no, you will win in the end. Good will prevail. But that's 4,000 years down the road. Will you still be able to wait? Will you still be able to expect when all around you evil was happening? Babylon was winning. Everything is down spiraling. When Noah came, the promise of a flood was going to happen. 120 years Noah was waiting and no flood was happening. What more? 4,000 years. And up until now, we are still living in the here but not yet, in the now but not yet. But it's still not happening. 4,000 years. But do you know that right smack in the center of that 4,000 years, God announced and proclaimed to one man, the invitation to follow so that redemption will happen to mankind. And who is that person? Abraham. Earlier called Abram, but later on renamed as Abraham. Abraham is placed right front and center. 2,000 years from Adam, Abraham was born. When Abraham was born, between that time until Jesus, who fulfills that promise in Genesis chapter 3, is also 2,000 years. And now we are living in that next 2,000 years. And it's still not happening. If you are walking and journeying with God, if you have received Jesus, and you already know that salvation is up there, happening, but it's still not happening, are you still going to be expectant? Are you still going to stay there and take the next steps so that you will be able to see the fulfillment of God's promise? But do you know, Abraham did. He waited and waited expectantly. And with that waiting and expectation, as he journeyed and walked with God, he saw and embraced that fulfillment. That every step that he took with God, every journey that he would be traveling with him, was just proof after proof after proof of what God's fulfilled promise is going to be. But Abraham did not see that, because it's still going to happen 2,000 years into the future. But today we will learn how Abraham was able to understand and embrace that. And it was considered righteousness for him, all because he believed. So, Abraham, initially called Abram because it meant he was an exalted father. But later on, his name was going to be changed, and he was going to be renamed Abraham. Why? Because he was now going to be declared and baptized named as the father of many nations. So if you are as excited as I am, let's delve into the story of Abraham for us to be able to understand what are the next steps that we should take as we follow Jesus into this journey that we are having. If there's one central truth that I would like us to draw from the life of Abraham as to how he was walking with God, it is this: that following God is a dynamic walk of faith. It is not static. It does not end when you accept Jesus for your salvation. It does not end when you join a Koinonia or attend a church service. It doesn't end that way. It is dynamic. There is growth. There is movement. It is progressive. It is an ongoing thing. It is a walk that you take every day of your life as you are living in Christ. It is not static, that you just stand up there and wait for everything to happen. Okay, just bring me to 2,000 years down. When Jesus comes, I will just stand here. Or you are going to go into the mountains and live like a hermit because you are just going to wait for Jesus to come. And that you are only just going to pray. No, you journey, you walk. There is an active participation on your part. You expect growth. You expect development. You expect changes. That's the dynamism of following God. He will not just ask you to sit there and wait for me to come back. There is a participation for us. So it is going to be dynamic and exciting at the same time. And it is going to be a walk of faith. Because that is where the journey becomes unfolding before our very eyes. You know, following God is both seeing the mountaintops and the crevices of a ravine. It is both seeing the calmness of the sea and savoring the wind just pressing onto your face. At the same time, experiencing the storms of life, the travels of life, the travesties of life, the difficulties of life. That is the walk that God is allowing us to embark on as we follow Him. But that walk is not without a portion or a gift of faith. And that gift of faith, what is faith after all? It is confidence in what God has said. It is confidence on His word. It is when you take a plane ride to be able to go to your destination. you expect and you are confident that that plane ride will bring you to where you're going. Or for example, the Grab ride that you took this morning. You place your destination, you have that confidence in your heart that I will reach Singapore. That is the faith that is being called upon us, that we are confident that at any point in time, in this dynamic walk that we have, we know that in the end, God will be there. We are confident that the promises that God has given us will happen. It is not going to be may happen, but it will happen. That is the dynamic walk of faith that all of us will experience every time we follow God. So allow me to entitle this conversation, A Journey of Faith. And we will go through the story of Abraham's call from Genesis chapter 12, starting with verse 1. Allow me to introduce Abraham to all of you. Abraham is one of the central figures of the Bible. So central that he is right smack between that 4,000 years when Jesus came for the fulfillment. But it's not that literal. He is central because he is one of the most talked about characters in the Bible. He is present in about 300 over Bible verses between the Old and the New Testament. He is revered as the founding patriarch of the Israelites, but he is also a significant figure predominant in the predominant religions of the world. Do you know that he is one of the characters, Bible people, that is known in all of the three major religions in the world? And he is revered at that. So, this is Abram. He was referred to as Abram because being an exalted father. But that name was changed to Abraham, as I've said, because he is now going to father many. He lived in Ur of the Chaldeans, that's modern-day Iraq. He also came from a family of idol worshippers. We read that in Joshua 24. If you will backtrack in chapter 11, you will see the genealogy of where Abram came from. And you will see there that he came from the family of one of the sons of Noah. And then you will see somewhere along the line that now, how did they become idol worshippers? When they were from the family of Noah, who was a staunch believer waiting and expecting for the flood to come, believing in God. But somewhere along the way, Abram's family became idol worshippers. He covenanted with God to be the father of many nations. He had two sons, Ishmael and Isaac, who was regarded as the child of the covenant. He had extraordinary faith that was demonstrated when he was asked by God to kill his very own son, Isaac. He was referred to as an example of faith, as written in Hebrews Hall of Faith. And I think the most important and the closest thing, the most gentle of the terms that is referred to him, he is a friend of God. He is a friend of God that every time they journey, he was not walking behind him or before him, but he was walking alongside him. And as we journey our follow series, I hope that at the end of this, we will be able to gain that name, that we are also a friend of God. Turn your Bibles to Genesis chapter 12, starting with verse 1. The Lord said to Abram, "Leave your native country, your relatives, and your father's family, and go to the land that I will show you." Abram was invited by God to follow on a journey. And that journey had two instructions for him: leave and go. So he was asked to leave everything that was familiar, everything that was comfortable. He was asked to leave his native land where he grew. He was asked to leave his relatives. And he was also asked to leave his father's family. Why do you think that is? Remember, his family was now idol worshippers. They were not only idol worshippers, they were idol makers. They were building those. That was their trade. But not Abraham. Abraham was different. He was already starting to doubt, why are we doing this? He already had an inkling of who God really was. Maybe hearing from stories of his relatives on Noah's side of the family. He was not only asked to leave the familiar, the comfortable, because they lived in Ur. And Ur is a progressive, economically rich country. He was also asked to go. Go. Go where, Lord? To the land that I will show you. The destination is unknown. When you ask for your grab ride, the destination should be placed specifically for them to be able to know where to bring you and for them to be able to state the fare, the amount that you need to pay. But this is different. You're asked to leave and go somewhere. Sige lang, I'll show you. Can you imagine? Abraham was going to leave with his family, his relatives, and some of his household helps in tow with all of the caravan of animals. And saan tayo pupunta? Dun. Saan yun? Dun. They didn't know. They didn't know where the destination was going to be. Abraham was asked by God, leave your familiar family, leave your comfort zone, leave your profession, leave everything behind, leave even the country that you have loved so much. But Hebrews tells us that by faith, Abraham, when he was called to go to a place that he would later receive as his inheritance, obeyed and went. The instruction was very clear. Leave your family behind and go. What is striking about how Abraham did and reacted is that he obeyed and went, even if he did not know where he was going. Do you know that the same invitation to follow was given to the disciples of Jesus? Peter and Andrew, John and James. In Matthew chapter 4, we read how they were invited. Going there, Jesus saw the other brothers, James and John. He has already seen Andrew and Peter at this time. They were sitting on the boat and they were mending their nets. After a day's work of fishing, the fishermen would mend their net. That's their profession. That's how they do. That's their work. And then Jesus called them. They were there with their father Zebedee. And when they were there, what did they do? At once, they left the boat. At once. No questions asked. It was so immediate. Other versions would say immediately they left the boat and their father. Children, if you left your father just like that, you won't be able to go home anymore, right? Bye, Dad. I'm following him. Why are you following him? Who is that? You don't even know him. But just like that, when Jesus invited them, by this time they were already starting to hear that there's this man who was teaching and preaching, and his words are different. There must be something there that caused them to follow immediately and without question. They left their boat. They left their father. They left their profession. And Abraham was asked to leave his hometown, his family, his friends, his father. That was what the instruction was. Because you know, mga kapatid, life can never be the same when you follow Jesus, when you follow God. Everything will change. Your goals, your ambitions, the way you think is going to change. This time you're going to check, am I doing it right? Am I doing something that will hurt God? Am I doing something that is not according to God's glory and plan for me? Everything will change. The way you think is going to change. You cannot be an unforgiving person and still say that you are walking with God. You cannot. You cannot say, you're walking with God and you say, God, kasi He hurt me so much. It's justified that I forgive him. I unfriend him, Lord. You cannot. You cannot get into a journey with God and still keep that gossiping lips. Alam mo, Lord, ayun, si Marisol na ngayon chinichismis ni Marites. You cannot. You will have to remove that and just declare and proclaim glory and love. Everything will change. Your old life, you cannot bring into your new life as you journey with God. As you follow God, everything will change. And Abraham and the disciples, for that matter, we will all see their stories. That when they decided to follow Jesus or when they decided to follow God, their whole life just changed. Your life can never be the same when you follow God. Following God is a dynamic walk of faith. It is not stagnant. Sometimes you're in the heydays of the life, and sometimes parang you're in the deepest pit that you don't know, Lord, how am I going out here? Am I going out here? But no, if you decide to follow God, you walk in faith and know that His promises will be fulfilled. Amen? Let's continue with the story. And God told Abraham, come, follow, go there, leave your country, and I will make you into a great nation. I will bless you and make you famous, and you will be a blessing to others. I will bless those who bless you and curse those who condemn you, who treat you with contempt. And all the families of the earth will be blessed through you. The promises are three-pronged. I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless and make you famous. I will bless those who bless you and curse those who treat you with contempt. And all the families of the earth will be blessed through you. Let's try to break that down. I will make you a great nation. I will bless you. I will make you famous. Up until today, we're still talking about Abraham, right? That's how famous he is. Almost all of the people, for as long as they have religion, know Abraham. That's how famous he has become. Abraham becomes the father of God's chosen people, the Israelites. That is how a great nation he has become a father of. But he also became the father of the Edomites, the Ishmaelites, the Amalekites, the Assyrians, and all of those ites that you can read in the Bible. Abraham was revered by the major religions of the world. 1/4 of the book of Genesis speaks about him and his family. And he was referred to as a friend of God and the father of faith. But you know, there's one question. Because in Genesis 11, you will read that Sarah was barren. She was childless. Therefore, Abraham did not have a child. How can I be the father of all nations when I cannot even have a family? Don't you think Abraham asked that? He did. In Genesis chapter 15, when God appeared to him in a vision, and he said, don't be afraid, Abraham. I am your shield. Such comfort when you're going through problems and God will say, I am your shield. I am your protector. Then he says, God naman, what use are the gifts that you show me? Look at all of this. But I'm childless. You know, everything that I have labored, my servant, Eleazar, will just be the one who will inherit it. And what did God say? Don't worry, he won't be your heir. Because you will have a son from your body. I like how the Message translated, paraphrased it. He said, a son from your body will be your heir. And then he took Abraham outside. Look at the skies. Can you see the stars? Count them. That's how many descendants you will have. He said, you're going to have a huge family. And you know what? At this time, at this juncture, Abraham was 75 years old. Sarah was 65, past childbearing age. But still, it was a wonder that all these years they couldn't bear a child, and now you're going to tell me that my children is going to be that much? But you know what? Abraham believed. He believed God, no questions asked. He believed God because you said so. Yes, I know it will happen. And because Abraham believed the Lord counted him as righteous. Because of what? Was it because of anything that he did? No, it was because he believed. It was because he trusted. It was because of his faith that it was counted to him as righteous. That's why God was able to call him, this is my friend that I am walking alongside with, that every time that I speak, he would believe. He said, I will bless you. I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse those who treat you with contempt. God knew that Abraham and his family was going to be threatened. Because by the time they reached Canaan, it was already populated by Canaanites. And along the road, there will always be bandits and people who would go against them. And God, this is His promise of protection to His people. I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse those who treat you with contempt. Diba? God has already placed a hedge of protection around us. So there's no fear. As you walk, even you're alongside the ravine, no, the Lord is there protecting me. As you walk and the mountain top is so far away, you know that He is going to be there because the hedge of protection from God, as He promised is going to be with us and for us. But of all the promises, I think this is the greatest and the most important. All the families on the earth will be blessed through you. I believe this is the most important promise of God's covenant because it encompasses now everybody. It is not just for Abraham's family. It now includes us. That is the reason why we are here. That is the reason why we have heard of Jesus Christ. It's because Abraham followed. It was because Abraham said yes to God to leave to the land of promise that He has prepared for him. God intends to bring blessings to the entire world, not just Abraham. That's why John 3:16 says, "For God so loved" who? The world. And the world includes us. It is not just the Israelites. It is not just God's chosen people. All because Abraham said yes. And the promise of a Savior was going to come. It is going to happen. The promised redemption is going to happen. You know, Abraham's resolve to follow God sets the stage for God's redemption plan for all humanity through Jesus. All because Abraham said, yes, I will follow. Can you imagine if Abraham said no? If Abraham had asked question, Lord, may aircon ba doon? Lord, do I have a good place? How's the weather? Is it hot? Is it full of does it snow there? Do I need mask? Is COVID free? Is it that country COVID free? If Abraham had set conditions to God, if Abraham said no, this is my comfort zone. How many of us have said no to God's command to follow or God's invitation to follow? How many of us have set conditions? I will follow only if you give me this, if you give me that, if you give me that. Following God is a dynamic walk of faith. Abraham's journey was not smooth sailing. It was not smooth and fancy trails. May time mabato, malubak, may crevice, may baha. Hindi po laging tahimik ang buhay pagka naglalakad ka sa Panginoon, kasama ang Panginoon. Life is a dynamic walk of faith, even when you're following God. So when someone invites you and tell me, "Halika, join ka dito sa amin, mawawala lahat ng problema mo." Takbo sa kabilang dulo. Because that's not true. I'm sorry to disappoint you, mga kapatid. But following God has dynamism. There's excitement. God will always put you to an exciting journey. And that journey will always prove Him true. He will always fulfill His promise that every word that He's uttered in His lips will happen. And that is something that we can be so happy about. So Abraham departed as the Lord had instructed, and Lot went with him. Abraham was 75 years old when he left Haran. He took his wife, his nephew Lot, and all his wealth, his livestock, and all of the people that he had taken to his household, and headed for the land of Canaan. And do you know that when they arrived Canaan, Abram traveled through the land of Shechem, and there he established his camp. Abram's life was never the same. He always lived like a nomad. They pitched tents. Samantalang sa Ur, he had maybe a mansion or at least a permanent roof over his head. He had a room where he would be able to sleep. Here, they just established tents. And they would just sleep there. Why? Because Abraham knew that this is going to be temporary. I am going to move wherever God brings me. I am going to move where God commands me to follow, and I will follow. So everything was temporary. Abraham lived a nomad, pilgrim life because he knew this life of ours here is temporary. We are foreigners traveling this road of life here on earth because God will come as He has promised, to prepare that place for us, a place of permanence, where we can enjoy His very presence. You know, this is the journey that Abraham took. And do you know that when they reached Canaan, he kept moving back and forth, because he knew everything was going to be temporary. But do you know what is so apparent in Abram's life is this? After Abram traveled south and set camp in the hill country in Bethel and to the west and Ai to the east, he built another altar. Every time he would be in a place where he would be able to settle for the night, he would build an altar. For what? To be able to worship God. Was it a difficult walk? Build an altar, worship God. Was it an easy, happy walk? Okay, ganda ng weather, sarap maglakad-lakad. He built an altar to worship God. At any point in Abram's life, he never failed to worship God. Kamusta po tayo? When the journey becomes difficult, do we just sulk and keep on complaining? Or do we stop and worship God? When we have successes in life, you're promoted, you got your university to go to, you got your university degree, you got your new job, you got the salary that you wanted. Do we praise God or do we forget Him? When we have problems, someone is sick or we are sick, our family in the Philippines are in dire need, we stop to worship Him? No, we stop and keep on asking and asking and asking. And oftentimes, we fail to worship God. Following God is a dynamic walk of faith. You will go to the peaks of the mountains, rejoicing, seeing the very beautiful scenery. But sometimes, the valleys get flooded and you get flooded. Pasok sa loob ng bahay ang ating mga baha. Do we change and leave? Because that walk is not going to be fun for us. Following God is a dynamic walk of faith, and you will see that this week in your Koinonia. What are some practical steps now to take as we decide to follow Jesus? Our campaign, Follow Everyone is Invited, has this teaching for this week when he says, following Jesus requires a step of faith. When I wake up, I will take that step and say, Lord, I will obey. I will follow. As you sleep in the evening, you decide, Lord, I will take that step of faith. So what do? Walk in faith. Do you know that characters in the Bible asked God to walk with them? Moses, if your presence is not going to go with us, just leave us here. That's why God gave them the pillar of fire at night and the cloud by day, so that they will be able to know that God's presence is there. Walk with us, God. That's what Moses said. Noah, who was considered righteous and blameless among the people, but he walked faithfully with God. David, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. So as you walk in faith, ask yourself, what step of faith is God asking me to take today? Is there a difficult decision that you have to take? Is there something that you need to decide upon? And you need to take that step of faith. Take time this week to reflect. How can I take a practical step of obedience and trust God in His promises? Is that to be able to come and forgive someone so that your relationship is restored? Is that a father that you have not been able to speak with for a long time? Or is it someone that you offended? What is that step of faith that you have to take today? And you know what? As Abraham felt that very presence of God every time he walked, God's promise for us is this: I will never leave you nor forsake you. We can trust. We have the confidence that God will walk with us and we will never be alone.